Welcome to the Nerd Chatter podcast, where last week we had a discussion about Star Wars, the prequels, the sequels, and the original trilogy. And we mentioned that this week we're going to go over the MCU. I'm here with my buddy Garrett. How are you, my friend?
Good, how are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. And we did discuss that we were going to go over the phases, the 4 phases of a Marvel MCU, and talk a little bit about the films. We did do a bit of recording for this segment already, and it did run a bit long, so we're going to do it again. We're going to try to keep it to a more reasonable time. Last time I think it was almost 2.5 hours. We're going to try to keep these to about an hour to an hour and a half. As always, you can check out our socials at Nerd Chatter Show. You can also check out the previous episode of the Nerd Chatter podcast at nerdchatter.com and everywhere else that you can find podcasts. Just like normal, we always start off the show with a little segment about the deals and free games and things that you can run across this week. I'm going to point out a few from Epic Game Store here. We got Car Mechanic Simulator 2018. That's free on the Epic Game Store until June 30th. Same thing with the A Game of Thrones board game digital edition, also free until the 30th of June. And a little bit of news with Fall Guys. That did go free to play on all platforms, including Switch, Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. And just a few days ago, we had the Steam Summer Sale start, and a few notable deals in here, and I'm sure there will be some more that pop up throughout the week. We do have NBA 2K22. That's 84% off at $9.59. COD World War II, 67% off at $19.79. Red Dead, the full game, that's 50% off right now for $29.99. The Outer Worlds, 70% off at $17.99. Sekiro's 50% off right now, $29.99. Chivalry 2 is 40% off, $23.99. Lego Star Wars, the Skywalker Saga is 25% off. Deluxe Edition is $44.99. Didn't you pick that one up?
I sure did. I will most likely do some live streaming on YouTube with that one.
Oh yeah, nice. Yeah, if I pick it up in the near future, I might do that as well. Destiny 2, the Witch Queen Deluxe Edition. That's also the Bungie 30th Anniversary Bundle. That one's 33% off, sitting at $66.99. And Master Chief Collection is 60% off at $15.99. Are you going to pick that one up?
Already did.
Oh, you picked it up. Nice.
I sure did.
Very nice. Yeah,
it's even downloaded and everything.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we'll have to get on some of that. Maybe do some live stream of that as well. I picked that up a while ago when it was on sale for a similar price, so I already have it. But I believe that game you can purchase individual games separately for like $5 or $10 or something like that. But this one,
they're pretty cheap.
Yeah, they're not bad, and you don't need to buy all of them, I believe. But $15.99 for the full deal is definitely a good buy. So with the first phase here, we got a handful of epic films. What'd you think about these films back in the day?
I mean, I really like them. That really set the tone for what the MCU is now, especially. Mm-hmm. It establishes the tone, and it establishes the tropes that we will see a lot in the MCU, like similar character villain as your main character. So we have an Iron Man and an Iron Man type villain a couple times, and that's just a recurring theme. Mm-hmm. But there's other tropes that are in there that it's all gets established with the core Avengers team.
Yeah, and with those films back when, like, did you jump into them quickly, or did you kind of like hold off and like whatever for a while, or did you like go and start watching these right when they're releasing?
You know, I jumped in right away. I think I took a while to watch Iron Man and then Incredible Hulk. I remember watching Incredible Hulk first and being really standoffish about it because it was an okay movie by itself, but it just felt weird. And
did you see the other one?
Previous Hulk,
was it 99 or whatever? Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it was 99, but the previous Hulk movie was just really, really bad. So I was just really cautious. Then I think it was in 2009, so about a year after Iron Man came out, I watched Iron Man, fell in love with Tony Stark and everything. I mean, I never really got into the comics or anything, so it was my first true introduction into Marvel.
Yeah.
And I was hooked from there. I mean, Thor's my guy. Seeing him in live action, other than just other material that I've like gone through with mythology stuff. But I don't know. It was really fun. I liked it.
Yeah, with the Incredible Hulk, it was a little funky. The one before, I think it was just Hulk or the Hulk. It was pretty hokey. They had a lot of the like comic transitions and like page peelbacks, I remember, and the color was really bad. And the Incredible Hulk was a little bit iffy. I don't know, it kind of felt like blah to me personally, but I still dig it. You watch it and you go back and watch it now. It's still pretty watchable. And with Iron Man, I think just everybody fell in love with Robert Downey Jr. and he did a fantastic job. And I think we can pretty much accredit all of the MCU success in those early years to him. And then Chris Evans, coming from Fantastic Four and Scott Pilgrim and kind of all these other jokey roles. He took that Captain America role pretty seriously and did it really well too. And then in that first phase, you have the Avengers. Well, did you see the premiere, the midnight premiere of the Avengers, or just a regular viewing?
I didn't do the midnight viewing, but I did see it on day one.
Mm-hmm.
It was Friday afternoon, I believe.
Epic experience.
It was very epic.
So good.
Yeah. I mean, I remember watching just in awe of having all of these characters come into one movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at that point, this was unheard of, and having it be so well put together. Because I mean, the X-Men movie, there's a lot of people, but they kind of get lost, and it's really herky jerky in that sense with the X-Men movie. So coming into this, it was just so smooth. They did such a great job on that first Avengers movie.
Yeah, well, and you have the proper planning by Marvel too, with Iron Man. It's a the toe dip in the water, and then the Incredible Hulk. The after credit scene of that film, you do have them hinting at the Avengers already. Iron Man 2, you have the introduction of War Machine. You have the introduction of Black Widow. Black Widow was the second film, right? Not the first?
Yes, it was the second one.
I believe it was the second one, yeah.
There was that boxing match that really started that off, if
yes.
you remember.
Yeah, with good old Happy, which I love that role by Jon Favreau. It's a very genuine role. The man is multifaceted. Thor, I always consider kind of boring, but I know Thor's your guy. I also consider him to probably be like the most well represented version of his comic form, even though it kind of veered away from it. It took liberties, and rightfully so. They did a good job with that character. Make a character that's kind of boring fun and for other people to actually enjoy rather than the hardcore comic book fans. But the Avengers, I remember, all these films I saw midnight premiere. Iron Man, I believe I saw midnight premiere, or early morning premiere. I'm not sure if they were doing midnight premieres at that time. The Incredible Hulk, I had told you a story in the past. In 2008, that was the U.S. Open for golf in Torrey Pines.
Yeah.
I had gotten some free tickets, having worked at a golf course, and they were bougie tickets, Lexus tent tickets. So it was like open bar, open omelet bar and salmon bar and prime rib and, open bar for ice cream and all this crazy stuff. So naturally I got tanked before like noon, and we left the golf tournament to go watch The Incredible Hulk, which came out the day before. So I have some fond, beautiful memories of watching that film. But really it was the Avengers that kind of like solidified how epic this whole MCU thing was. And they had done it by that point. We had been waiting for DC to give us a Justice League, or at the very least be willing to dabble with their own lore. You watch these CW series. I was a huge fan of Smallville, which we'll talk about next week in the DC catch up. But they were very hesitant at giving you exactly what you wanted because they had certain reservations about making it seem too corny or not appealing to an overall mass of viewers rather than just the fans. And Marvel, in this sense, kind of proved to everybody that, well, I guess, the executives, that if you do focus on what fans actually want, that they're going to come and watch and absorb your product and be diehard fans of it for what looks to be decades to come,
Heck yeah. So in phase 2, we have a kind of a eclectic group of movies where, there's some good ones in there, but there's also a couple bad ones. But for me personally, Guardians of the Galaxy is where it really stood out to me, and then Avengers: Age of Ultron. I think those two movies really stand out as the peak of that phase 2.
You like Age of Ultron?
I do. It was nice with the introduction of the Maximoff twins, and
yeah, you can't hate that movie too much because it gave us Wanda.
And Wanda has developed into a really good character. I do have some problems with her, the writing of her later on.
Mm-hmm.
The acting for Wanda is phenomenal across the board, though. I just have to say that.
Yeah. missing a lot of discourse online, which we'll talk about in a bit when we get to the end of this, because it's related to Multiverse of Madness. But just some of the criticisms that are starting to pop up are kind of odd, just because it seems like the MCU fan base is starting to turn on that film. I think they realized it might have stemmed from Elizabeth Olsen's comments on her being kind of shocked that she had been turned into a villain, which really didn't make any sense to me because the character is kind of known for some of the more villainous things that she's responsible for in the Marvel universe, you know. So naturally, after so long, that she's bound to turn into some type of antagonist. So I was here for it, but you do see some murmurs out there. The Marvel fan base is starting to get a little weird on that, which I'm not 100% sure as to why. But like I said, we'll talk about that when we get to the Multiverse of Madness. Um,
Yeah.
you know, as far as Age of Ultron, I think my overall issue with it was James Spader just as the voice of Ultron and how they decided to animate his face.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I mean, I've seen the comic book faces for a lot of the Ultron stuff because I was
Hmm.
curious and just did a little bit of internet research. And I mean, it had like that little Iron Man slit, and it was just kind of more of a generic face than
Yeah.
like a so-called fleshed out face. And especially once we see Vision, that's also a little bit different. But I mean, like I said, in this phase, I think Guardians of the Galaxy is my favorite out of the bunch. I love Groot. I love Star Lord, and just the banter humor that's in that movie. Then, especially with Drax and like just the dumb humor that there is there, it's really fun for me. Then the music for that movie is just great.
Yeah.
That just really stands out to me.
Well, I mean, you know, and I don't know if you took advantage of it. There was a deal last week, I think it was, where you could get Xbox Live Ultimate or Game Pass Ultimate for $1. And on there was the Guardians of the Galaxy game. And I have to say that it's even better. Those characters are even more likable and hilarious in that game than they are in the movies. So I definitely recommend it. With Guardians of the Galaxy too, I mean, they had a bit of a weird deal with that because they took on James Gunn, you know, and I'm sure you like the James Gunn films, right?
Which ones are you referring to?
Well, I mean, you got all of the Guardians of the Galaxy. You got Suicide Squad now, the newer Suicide Squad. I'm not sure if you saw that. We'll talk about that next
I
week on the
did.
show.
I mean, I really like Guardians of the Galaxy movies. The second one, there I felt like ego and everything was kind of weird with that, but I liked it.
Yeah.
I like his Marvel movies. I should say that.
See, and that's the thing with James Gunn is that it's like I mean it's actually probably even worse than this, but it's like Disney hiring Quentin Tarantino and the majority of people not knowing what Quentin Tarantino had done prior. And that was an eventual backlash that Disney got with the Guardian series and James Gunn's involvement, because you know he was involved with Trauma. I mean, anybody that knows anything about Trauma, you know, no further explanation. They're shock films. They're smutty. They're gross. They're offensive. They're intentionally that way, you know. And you know, to be involved with films like that, and then you know be very upfront with Disney, and then the fan base initially when getting taken on, he had already apologized for it, but I think somewhere after the release of the second film in Phase 3, I think it was, you know, you had him actually, you know, cut from Disney, and that's when he went and did the Suicide Squad film, which I enjoyed. But you know, fan base is weird, and Guardians of the Galaxy has had kind of a tumultuous history already just because of the involvement of James Gunn. But I don't get it. I like his direction. I think he gets along with the actors well, and from what I hear, the actors would do it with nobody else, which is always good to hear, you know. So I enjoyed Guardians
Yeah.
of the Galaxy just because Chris Pratt coming from Parks and Rec and them being such obscure characters that literally nobody liked, to now being household names that everybody loves, and people wear Groot T-shirts and have, you know, Groot keychains and you know, quote Drax on a weekly basis, and that type of thing. It's good to see. That's the type of stuff you love to see, you know.
Yeah.
What are the films we got in Phase 2 that we should probably direct our attention to? Thor: Dark World's in there.
Yeah, it's kind of yucky.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's definitely yucky. I mean, definitely, I think any sensible person would consider that to be bottom ring Marvel film. It would be in the bottom like 5 at least, you know. I would
At
also,
least,
I mean, some people like it just because of the character development of Loki, and if you don't watch that film and you skip it, you don't know where his mom is. Spoilers, but
yeah,
things are answered in there, and I believe that is the last appearance that we got of Jane Foster before what we have coming up here. I think next week or whenever that film releases.
correct. It's
So,
in
Love
two
and Thunder,
weeks.
Love and Thunder,
Yeah,
a Taika Waititi film. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those movies where you should probably watch it just so you can keep up, but don't plan on enjoying it because it's gray and boring and ugly. But another
yeah,
film that I would consider to be in that bottom ring would be Iron Man 3 as well. A lot of people like it. My fiance loves it. It's probably one of her favorite, Marvel films. And even after rewatching, during Christmas break, we had the baby and we were sitting around watching movies, and we rattled off all 28 of these films, or 27, or however many it was at that time, and my opinion of the Dark World didn't change. It was still gray and boring and bland and not a fun watch. And it was also the last bit of Chris Hemsworth's kind of stoic character in the MCU before they allowed him to get a little bit wild with Ragnarok. So but yeah, my thing with Iron Man 3 is the injection of the kid character, even down to the selection and music, and I understand where the character has to go when writing these characters over long periods of time. You have to kind of turn somewhat internal when it comes to the struggles, but having gone from, one bad Iron Man villain to another bad Iron Man, not bad in the sense that they're bad villains, I'm just saying that they're bad versions of the protagonist, or the anti-protagonist is what the antagonist is in these films. And you get a little bit of stretch swings with like Justin Hammer and that type of character building with Iron Man 2, but Iron Man 3, it turned internal, and then you got the kid character, and kind of the plot was a little bit frustrating for me. So I'm not a big
yeah.
fan. What did you think of Iron Man 3?
I mean, I liked it. I'm definitely more of an average moviegoer when it comes to Marvel movies. Like where I'll try to go to the opening day for most of them. If not, I'll wait till they come out on Blu-ray or whatever. And with Iron Man 3, I really liked it. The fake Mandarin who has a fake Mandarin, I thought that was fun for me. I loved that character, Trevor. Uh, Ben Kingsley did a fantastic job
Mm-hmm. Ben Kingsley's
acting
playing
and acting.
what did he play in the past? He played Gandhi.
Gandhi.
Yeah, he played Gandhi in the Gandhi film way back when. I remember watching that in high school.
Yeah, I mean, he's played so much that he has
Yeah.
extreme acting range.
Oh, super range, yeah. And then you get, the actual Mandarin popping in, and it's a completely worse approach to the character. It couldn't have gotten any worse. But they managed to do it. So there was a lot of decisions in that film that I just didn't like personally, but rewatching it, I can see that there's things that people would like, and I'm sure I can dig as well. But you got Winter Soldier in Phase 2 as well. I mean, Winter Soldier's pretty epic.
It is. I like some of the other ones in this phase, but to each their own.
No, I mean, the Winter Soldier, that is literally the first appearance, the directorial debut of the Russo brothers in the MCU, and looking at this list is fairly early actually. And then they're also responsible for Civil War, and then Infinity War and Endgame, which are essentially like the greatest films of all time. So giving credit where credit is due with that Captain America film, it was a complete tonal shift. It had definitely a lot more of a decent spy film vibe to it. So I enjoyed it quite a bit. And then you get the introduction of Bucky as the Winter Soldier, who has gone on to be an incredibly important character in the MCU, and being a co-star of his own Disney Plus TV show. So there were moves that were made in Phase 2, and then you have Ant-Man, which I was at that Comic-Con in 2006, I believe, when Jon Favreau and Kevin Feige came in to the hall, and we went in there expecting it to just be Marvel, comics or cards or cartoons or something like that. But we happened to accidentally stumble into that auditorium or hall at Comic-Con, and sit there to actually witness them announcing the MCU in the first film of Iron Man, and show the first photo, a promotional picture, which I did make a little bit of a blurb on our website over at nerdchatter.com. You can actually go see those pictures, and there actually is a picture of them on stage that year as well. And Yeah, we knew what was coming. This was a deprived fan base of comic goers who was looking for somebody to finally take us seriously, and that day, we left that room knowing that that was the case. But uh, the other movie that they announced with Iron Man was Ant-Man, and it took them 7 years, 6 years to get around to it. But yeah, Ant-Man was actually supposed to be number two in the lineup before Incredible Hulk, I believe.
Do you know why it was delayed? That seems really odd.
No, and I remember going back and doing some research, and I think it was because Edgar Wright was involved with the films, but I don't know. I think he like stepped away or backed off. However, it was a notable name for the director slated for Ant-Man, and Edgar Wright's coming to mind, but I don't think the film that came out doesn't reflect his directorial style. So I need to probably refresh on that. But who directed it and all that stuff, I have a feeling that he wrote it or a part of it or parts of rewrites or something like that. But not 100% versed on Edgar Wright's relationship with the MCU. I do know that Ant-Man, though, was slated for release in phase one of Marvel originally and kept getting pushed back and pushed back. And we're looking at the last film in phase two. So a little bit of a bumpy phase, to say the least, I guess. I mean, some people you could split it right down the middle in terms of really bad and really good, but I guess that's just up to interpretation. What about phase three? We got a lot on this one. Look at this.
Yeah, there's a lot on there. I mean, Civil War is, I would say, like a mini Avengers movie. The Russo brothers writing that one, and we have Spider-Man being reintroduced into the MCU. I mean, we have just this awesome collection of characters. And one thing I just want to expand upon, like with the first Avengers movie, I was just so impressed by how good all of these characters were starting to interplay together. In every single Avengers movie, we keep on getting more characters built in, and it's keeping that same quality of not divvying away too far or anything like that.
No, that's a miracle.
Yeah,
what they've managed to do with that is insane. Like Ocean's 11 at the time was like, oh, I don't know about this, and you do got people kind of fighting for screen time, in that film. Just because of the acting chops. But yeah, you're right. The Avengers films, they meticulously amped it up little by little with the characters that you're going to be forced to deal with, I mean, why do you think they did that?
I mean, I don't know. Whatever their plan was, intentions were, they've pulled it off.
I think by this point, it's because the Avengers, I mean, my exposure to the Avengers was like video games, cartoons, and, a small bit of comic book reading when I was a kid, most of which took place in comic book shops. But you have the Avengers, which has had a wide array of Marvel characters be involved with it. And from a business perspective, I mean, from the get-go, it was the ultimate outlet to feed massive numbers of IPs that you can profit off of, essentially, and the real question were they going to be able to take these characters that nobody even knew about and then turn them into these phenomenons that would make the money that they're making now, and you got Guardians of the Galaxy 2 in that phase, and I'm assuming you like Volume 2.
For the most part, I do. Again, the humor, music is all on point for me. However, Ego and the Big Planet, with all that's too hokey for me. Mm-hmm. But that's my opinion.
I mean, it's not any less hokey in the comics either. It's actually more hokey in the comics for sure. Which they can get away with. And I mean, to be honest, and to give them credit, I mean, compared to, the Justice League wrestling Steppenwolf for some cubes, you got some pretty wild out there storylines and plots that Marvel has dared, to experiment with and has gotten away with it pretty successfully. And things that don't land kind of get brushed aside pretty quickly, which is good to see. I mean, with Doctor Strange, he was taken in that's another phase 3 film, Doctor Strange. That one came out in 2016. It's essentially another Iron Man film with a bit of a twist and a character that's a lot less charismatic. But I do think that, Cumberbatch did a pretty decent job. It's just over time, it kind of feels like they're getting a little bit more loose with that character when, not necessarily a jokester. He's not a pushover. Doctor Strange is at times one of the more powerful characters in the MCU or in the Marvel universe, not the MCU, but the Marvel universe. You know, I mean, you can say that about a number of characters. You know, so I mean, you got a lot of expansion into some trippy stuff in Phase 3, which I mean, you know, even more so in Phase 4 with Eternals and stuff like that. But Guardians of the Galaxy got pretty trippy. Some of the visuals, you know, the fight with Ego and the graphics that were involved, or the CGI that was involved, and the route they took with some of the fighting was a bit weird and hokey. But all in all, you
Yeah,
know, it was a fun movie.
but I think the one thing that we can all be grateful for about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is the meme and GIF that has come out of Groot, or Baby Groot specifically, trying to figure out which button to press.
Yeah, to push the button. Yeah. Yes. And it's GIF, by the way.
I will continue to say GIF.
It is GIF. All right. Anyways. Also in Phase 3, I mean, you got Ragnarok, which is a dramatic 180 in terms of directorial style, with Taika Waititi making his directorial debut in the MCU.
I think this is the best Thor movie, for just my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It's really fun to see them expand beyond that serious tone that Thor had, and more of that Shakespearean tone and dialogue of him just expanding, going to the trash planet and dealing with that. I mean, that's all really fun to deal with.
Mother know you weareth her drapes. Yes. The Shakespearean Thor being gone is a fantastic development in the MCU for sure. That was just something that I never really cared for, even though it fit with the character perfectly, you know, and he pulled it off, but it was just, it didn't roll well with the other characters unless they were constantly making him the punchline, which, I mean, look at him. You're not going to make that dude the punchline. So they had to let him loosen up.
Except Iron Man does every time.
I mean, to a certain extent, he doesn't push it too far. You know what I mean? Because, you know, he's not stupid. You know, with Thor Ragnarok, the following year, you got Black Panther, you know, and I don't know. That's a weird one for me. What do you think?
I really liked Black Panther. It was really nice to go to Wakanda and see what that was all about, and how they are using is it vibranium, right?
Yeah.
Seeing how they use that in their like day-to-day lives and how they're producing that was really fun.
Mm-hmm.
However, the CGI at the end, where you have Killmonger and like the Black Panther suit with the one color outline, then we have Black Panther in the same suit with the other color outline. That was really bad CGI.
Yeah, super bad.
And so it kind of brought me out of it for a little bit during that fight scene. But I mean, other than that, I liked it. It was fun. Or I wouldn't say it was fun. It just brought a whole new tone. And outside of, I don't know, New York or Europe that we've seen pretty generally in the MCU. So it was nice just to get away.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, you do have the issue with the dated CGI in that particular film. I'm not sure why. I don't think there was any. I mean, probably one of the better villains. I kind of considered him to be a little more of a frustrating villain to work with, and you know, you're kind of led to be compassionate for the character at the end of the film, but I really wasn't. And I think just the overall attitude was an arrogance to it that was kind of aggravating to me to watch. But although he did a fantastic job acting in that role, and then the expansion on Wakanda, and you know, the more scenes of the family or the sister and you know, the varying tribes in Wakanda, and that whole lore was very fun to see. However, it kind of seemed like they got the rough end of the stick when it came to the CGI budget and the effort put in, because that last fight, the ultimate fight of the film, was like one of the worst fights I've seen in the MCU. So I mean, as far as
I'd probably rank that fight scene just because of the CGI. The choreography was fine. It was just the CGI was so poor.
Yeah.
I'd rank it probably in the top, or I guess the bottom 3 of all the fight scenes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting like, you know, Spider-Man, like Sam Raimi Spider-Man CGI vibes on certain scenes. You know, like weird swinging physics and just the way the camera is moving along with a moving subject, and it was just shot really, really poorly. The movie was okay, but I don't consider it to be one of my favorites in like the bottom tier. You know, and then another Phase 3 film we can't forget is Homecoming. I mean, you know, you had the introduction of Spider-Man with Civil War, but you also had Homecoming, which was a fantastic representation of the Spider-Man that we've always wanted, the more quippy, a little bit annoying, or maybe even obnoxious young Spider-Man that is going around and just trying to do like whatever he can. And it was good to
Yeah.
see a film kind of pull back and be a nice little like high school story,
Yeah. Well, and I just want to point out Tom Holland has done such a good job of being like the overall package of Spider-Man. I feel like Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were both really good at one aspect of Spider-Man, either being Peter Parker or being Spider-Man. While I think Tom Holland does a overall really good job of being both.
Yeah.
Where he doesn't necessarily excel in either one like the other actors did. He just has that whole like sale or that the holistic Spider-Man,
Yeah.
and I really like that.
Yeah, I guess I have an overall issue just with Andrew Garfield's representation of the character as a whole. Even with the Spider-Man, he's kind of a dick in those movies. You watch it and you're just like, you get your dose of Tom Holland type Spider-Man, or you rewatch the original trilogy, and then you watch Andrew Garfield, and he's kind of like toying with people, and he's not very kind. He's going through a lot of like internal stuff, and he's projecting that more than any of the other Spider-Man. And even in the newer Spider-Man film, it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek nod to that character being the like overly emotional. I mean, he went through some traumatic stuff, but the emotional Spider-Man, the angsty one. And he had his moments in the new film that kind of showed that, and it was fun. It was like MCU even understood that, like they even understood the difference between the character enough to make it something in the film, and that goes to show you exactly what MCU is working with. I liked it. I liked Homecoming. I think Vulture in that film in particular is like one of the best villains in the MCU, and Michael Keaton is a badass, and the scene in the car is like the most tense scene of the MCU so far.
Yeah, Michael Keaton's great. He does a fantastic job of being a villain, and I mean, I don't think I've seen him as a villain in any other movies. Does he play a villain in any other movies?
If you watch the McDonald's biopic, I guess you would consider it. It's a biopic, but it's called The Owner. It's a super good movie, and Ron Swanson, Offerman is one of the McDonald's brothers. And they started their McDonald's, and he's the business guy that came in and purchased it. And he's like the scummy business guy that, hey guys, I want to help you like become a bigger, brand and expand. And then he ended up taking them for everything they had, so he has played like villain roles. He's also played more in-depth heady roles, like in Birdman, which I haven't seen all the way through, but was fun. A lot of recommendations on that, which one day I might actually sit down and watch. But Michael Keaton's got range. Like, there's no joke about
he
that.
Does.
Like, he absolutely belongs in a Batman Beyond film playing old Bruce Wayne before it's too late. Like more Michael Keaton. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I mean, he does a really good job. Like I said, I hadn't seen him in a villain role before, but he nailed it.
Yeah, I definitely recommend. I mean, just as a movie, it's just such a good movie. The Owner, I think it's on Netflix.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, in Phase 3, that's the big boy, right? That's the one all end all. That's Infinity War. We get Infinity War in 2018. What was your experience with Infinity War?
Because I hadn't really been into Marvel that much, or I mean, I was into the MCU, but I hadn't done any of the dabbling in other media. It was horrifying. I mean, that end snap, especially with Thanos going back in time and ripping that stone out of Vision's head, and just seeing him turn gray was so sad and heart-wrenching.
That's a morbid scene, for sure.
Oh, 100%. Then, I mean, seeing all of the characters that I came to love just vanish into dust, it was so heart-wrenching. Very good movie.
Yeah, I mean, with me, I mean, my story of Iron Man, we were in the room when they announced the MCU, so we were hyped from, negative 2 years, we were ready. So by the end of Phase 1 and the Avengers hit, it was like, you're 100% in. So when Endgame or when Infinity War came, a lot of people that were knee deep in the MCU and where they were going with it, and you know, just by will alone, the fans just collectively hoping for certain things to happen so that things line up the way they want it to end in this grandiose fight. uh that was it, like MCU was aware of it and they helped it along, and then they gave us Infinity War, which any neckbeard that walked into that theater, that was aware of exactly what this meant, you knew what was going to happen, and you weren't surprised when it did happen. Me personally, I directed my attention to everybody in the movie theater. I knew that it was gonna happen the way that it was gonna happen, and I didn't necessarily need to focus on it. I'd see the movie again, but it was dead silent in that movie theater. There were people crying. There were people screaming no and like, oh my God, like there was genuine emotion in that movie theater for a comic book film. And like it was such a moment where I was able to kind of just like take it in and just be appreciative of where we came after so many years and the impact that, it's just a bit of ownership. It's just like gamers and streamers and comic book fans and anybody else that was shunned as being a nerd or an outcast as a kid, to then grow up in a world where what you love so much makes so much money that the people that used to mock and ridicule you for liking those things are now driving around with stickers on their cars and wearing Baby Yoda t-shirts, and will never miss a single episode of their Disney Plus product. Like that's the
Nerds
world
rule the world.
we do, and like that's how it came about. In Infinity War, that was that moment for me where I knew it, I was aware of it, I knew it was coming, I anticipated their reaction, and I got exactly what I wanted, and I left that movie theater super satisfied. So Infinity War to me is like my favorite movie, and I mean that's coming from somebody that's watched The Dark Knight like at least, I don't know, 60, 70 times.
Heck yeah. I mean, Infinity War's really great. I really liked Endgame as well. Just the chaos and everything that is ensued, the transportation between all the things that was going on, the time travel to get the stones. It was just a really fun adventure for me. Everything that comes after Endgame is really interesting because we have so much impact because of Endgame and what happens and the fallout that happens. I mean, also from Infinity War, there's in-universe 5-year difference, and I mean, people have moved on with their lives, and people that lost a spouse got remarried, and all of this stuff that's happened. And I mean,
very sad.
Everybody comes back.
It's a sad plot. You wanna get soaked up in the emotion that they're trying to give you, but at the same time, I found genuine interest in that period of time. Like every time they harken back to people disappearing or reappearing once it's reversed, I like that. I like that little burst of knowledge or background information or what was going on during that period of time. I would love to see, that the society, what happened immediately when it happened, what happened for the weeks following, how did the government get involved, and how did they adapt, and what did the other heroes do, what happened to their mental states, like did some of them lose their minds, did they become villains? Like there's so much that you can do with just those 5 years. So I latch on to any bit of reference to those 5 years. And I'm not one to hope that they go and make a Disney Plus series about it or what have you, pull a Star Wars and start injecting layers into the storyline. But regardless, the ambiguity of those 5 years is very interesting to me, and that's my favorite part of those films. However, I'm not a big fan of Nerdy Hulk and Fat Thor, the loose end with Cap, and what that whole decision has an effect on in the future. I don't know how the butterfly effect didn't take hold in that particular case, especially since she went on to have kids, and she went on to, like there's an entire lifetime that she lived after that is negated instantaneously at the end of that film. And
I don't think so. I mean, especially from what we know now in some of the newer movies, especially in the Disney Plus series Loki, I mean, we would have seen the TVA come in and like do some cleanup, or if it was meant to happen that way, I mean, it happened. And so I've always been curious. We see like I can't remember her first name, but Carter, the love interest for Captain. We see her like almost at her deathbed, and she was talking about the life that she's lived. And at that moment, did they know that they were going to do that with Captain? Like, was that really a foreshadowing of him? Is the person that she's talking about? Because it kind of sounds like she remembers Captain, but is also kind of confused that he looks that way.
Yeah, I don't know if they went and added like additional layers of depth to that conversation with that. I mean, I just took it as her having, delusions or dementia setting in, that type of thing, and it was the end of her days. I mean, my thing is that everybody that was in that room with her when he left is no longer in existence. Because she never married the guy that she married, and they never. But
what if the guy she married was Captain all along?
I mean, you do see. I mean, what did she say that she said that she married somebody, right?
Yeah. However, Steve Rogers wouldn't have been, when he came back in time, he wouldn't have called himself Steve Rogers.
Like she wouldn't know. Bro.
Oh, she would know, but everyone else.
Literally everybody else would know. Literally everybody else would know. They built museums in his honor, bro. They have statues. A kid that was like 9 years old recognized him when he was incognito at the museum and shit. Like, they would know.
Regardless, what I'm saying is I think that he went back in the time, stayed with Peggy, and that is what we see at her deathbed, is she's talking about that. And he just changed his name and stayed incognito to avoid confusion and having to stay outside of sight, if you will, when in theory we can have two captains, an old captain and a young captain, given this theory at the same time. But yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I would have to go back and look to see whether or not that she explicitly describes him or names him. I could have swore that she did, but I mean, at the same time, if they left it vague enough to where you could fit that in there, then, yeah, it could make sense.
Yeah.
It is one of those things where, having set up all of that in the film, if you're looking at it as a self-contained film and all this concern about making sure that everything's the way it is before you return, you don't split the timelines, then everything's fine. I mean, if it fits, it fits, and if so, that's cool. But
for the simple fact that we see Captain again, like moments later after he disappears in time, or going through that time machine, but he's, old, that is a clear indication that was always meant to happen, and butterfly effects didn't happen, and that was like the predetermined path, and that's why the TVA didn't, do the old, pokey stick thing and send him to get curled or whatever they call it.
Yeah, it could be. I have to go back and look at it. I mean, again, I was thinking about it from a self-contained perspective, and it was like they wanted a sappy ending, so they just made it happen,
Well,
if it does fit in, and that was something that they were thinking about running into that film, and they just took advantage of it, and it's a nice little fit in what's already there, then yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
So we talked about Avengers Endgame. I kind of want to skip Captain Marvel. I personally just don't like that film, and they shoehorned that character in there for pretty explicit reasons.
For Endgame,
and she served her purpose. It's an incredibly boring character for me. Very just a lack of charisma on behalf of the performance, and kind of the shoehorning in there as being the real first Avenger kind of irked me when it happened. Just having gone through that first phase on a such elevated level compared to your standard viewer at the time, I mean, I was in it as deep as a person would be in it now back then, so to see them willing to kind of toss Captain aside was a little frustrating, but it is what it is. We got that film, we got a lot more Sam Jackson, which I'm always a fan of, but I wasn't a fan. So we can go ahead and shuffle on down to Spider-Man Far From Home. What'd you think about that one?
I mean, I liked it. Seeing all of the after effects of Endgame. I mean, Peter and all of his friends, or most of his friends, were all taken away in the snap and then brought back, and then like this is their getaway to Europe as a like get their minds off of everything that's happened. And I mean, it's fun. It's like a field trip movie, but
Yeah.
I don't like the how Mysterio is portrayed with all the drones and everything. I feel that's poking a lot about what's going on with drones in real life, which is fine. They can do that, but that portion didn't hit the mark for me. But everything else about the movie, I enjoyed.
Yeah, Spider-Man Far From Home with Mysterio and Jake Gyllenhaal. I think Jake Gyllenhaal just did a good job with the character.
He did a great job.
Yeah, he fit in the
I'm not
MCU
knocking
fine.
that.
The thing with Mysterio is that, even the original backstory of the character is that he's kind of a washed up special effects artist for Hollywood who utilizes smoke and mirrors to deceive and rob banks and commit crime and that type of thing. So me personally, I saw the drones as kind of like a natural evolution of just like technology and how somebody would be able to pull off something of this scale. Because like in the comic books and the cartoons, like literally, like it's either a complete fabrication of existence that gets played off with just a puff of smoke and some trickery, and you're just left to believe that that worked. But in film form, you really can't do that. You have to have some type of flushed out explanation as to how this person is able to deceive so many people from varying angles and convince, even the most tenured spies and stuff like Nick Fury and that they're legit,
Well,
So I saw
was
this kind
that
of an
Nick
event.
Fury though?
Yeah, a little bit of trickery going on with that, and he was up in Sword, the Sword base. I'm not sure where. It could be anywhere in space, to be honest. But you do have Sword and Shield. You got the Sword being the space bound version of Shield, and then Shield being the earthbound version. You
Well,
know where
doesn't Shield evolve into Sword?
they're like different branches, but it's
Okay.
my thing with that is like Shield's basically no longer in existence. It was infiltrated by Hydra. You got a lot of space stuff coming in, and it was nice to see him off Earth and doing something more extravagant. But we haven't really gotten anything involving that since. We haven't seen Nick Fury and where he's been at. But as far as Spider-Man Far From Home, some loose ends in that, and you got Marissa Tomei in there doing her thing as always, and Jon Favreau. You love to see him.
Yeah.
Not a big fan of Zendaya, to be honest, as MJ. There's a pretty big fascination with her as just an actress, and to be honest, I've never been drawn in with any of her performances. They kind of all seem pretty droll and one note. Sometimes you can get some emotion out of her, but a lot of time it's kind of like the dead eye, angsty vibe. All in all, yeah, like you said, it's like a Euro trip type film, and I just dig that high school vibe that these films have given off, which I don't think we're going to get anymore with these future Spider-Man films, to be honest.
I don't think so either. And I mean, it's nice to have these high school films like in our back pocket, but like, I mean, isn't the next one supposed to be called like freshman year or something like that?
I don't know what the next one's going to be called. I haven't followed that too much.
Yeah.
As far as Phase 3 and all those films, I think it was probably one of the better phases of them all. To be honest, I think that's probably my favorite phase, and that's even including Phase 1. Now, Phase 4, we're going to wrap it up, but we don't have too much to go over because Phase 4 is not complete. We have WandaVision, which was a Disney Plus series, and we had Black Widow, which was a horrible movie. We have Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which was decent. The Eternals, and then we had Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which came out not too long ago.
Yeah, we just had Spider-Man No Way Home as well. That was in December.
Yeah, No Way Home.
I loved that movie.
You like No Way Home?
Oh yeah, seeing Alfred Molina back as Doc Ock was beautiful. Seeing all those original villains back. William Dafoe. I mean, he played that character so perfectly. That was so good.
Yeah. I mean, it made it even better, to be honest. That character got better. I do like the Marvel-ication of his costume, where it's like, yeah, we understand it was a little hokey, but we also understand that people like that costume quite a bit. So let's modify it a little bit. Got rid of the mask, gave him a bit of a scarf, to kind of add that purple to it, and it made him look cool. Gave him the hood, and it looked pretty solid. So I dug that film too, with Doc Ock coming back, and you got the boys coming back. I just realized, I mean, making reference to it earlier in the Spider-Man review, but I got those movies mixed up. But at the end of this film, you have him in the traditional Spider-Man outfit, and he's doing his thing, and it looks pretty good. So I was pretty stoked on it. I'm not gonna say it was my favorite, just because just of what it sacrificed for the character, and kind of I was digging where it was going, and they kind of rewrote it. Now, whether or not that was intentional from the beginning, or if they realized that once they lost Tony Stark, that it would be best to go back and have Spider-Man become Spider-Man the appropriate way. We talked about this off air, but you kind of got an accelerated Peter Parker. He was given a very advanced suit, far more advanced than the majority of suits that he ever had in the comic books, almost right out the gate. And then it got just crazier after that. The Iron Spider suit was used pretty flippantly, even in this film. So I could see them probably taking a step back and having to go back to ground the character a little bit, and maybe remove the love interest so that the character can have a more adult storyline. So I do like where that one ended up. But that's becoming a divisive film online already when it comes to the direction of it and the decisions of the characters and stuff like that. Kind of weird to see some of these fans turn on these properties so quickly. But WandaVision, what do you think about WandaVision?
I felt it was fun. It was really interesting to see Marvel portraying, the style of I Love Lucy and all those classic black and white TV shows, and the tropes that are in those, and having them in that, and have it go through the decades. It was really fun. At the end of that, it was really weird for me with Agatha. I know we talked about this off podcast, but how Agatha was like supposed to be training her, and like that was like the way it was in the comics. We get that a little bit with her, like
The rune
talking about the runes and everything like that, but it wasn't like that. So it was like, we know Wanda was the villain, and it was very dark, especially with all the stuff with Vision, and like having her kids being brought to life through thoughts, and everything that was with that is extremely dark. But having Wanda being the villain in that, but it always felt like it was Agatha, then it wasn't, and it was just that part was confusing for me. But other than that, it was fun.
Yeah, I think the revelation of that whole series is her becoming Scarlet Witch, which, I mean, by this point you've never heard her be referred to as Scarlet Witch, because I can't be 100% positive as to the comic accuracy of how she receives her powers. However, I do know that she is a mutant. Like, she is a legitimate mutant. That's why her brother is Quicksilver, who is a known mutant. Quicksilver's a mutant, but because of the way they introduced Wanda into the MCU, you never had the assumption that she was a mutant, air quote, as in the Fox owned property up until a few years ago, which is, now you're starting to get a little bit of reference to Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and the term mutants in general can now be used by Disney. So, you get people that are kind of iffy about Wanda. They really came to love her as a character. And I think they did that without understanding what the character was, because the character probably should have gone bad sooner. But what they decided to do is they made her, an antagonist, and then become an Avenger, which, I mean, she was an Avenger as well, but she's also a bit crazy. I remember the video games when I was younger, and she was one of the characters in the arcade cabinet, so I was aware of who she was because of that, and some of the comics. And No More Mutants is an incredibly well-known, phrase in comic lore. And she was the one that not sure if she killed the majority of mutants by uttering those words, or if she removed their abilities. But she was able to inflict an effect on the majority of mutants around the world. So she has immense power, immense power. She is incredibly powerful. And they've kept her low key this entire time. So these people are getting a little anxious about what they're doing with their beloved Wanda. But me, it's like, hell yeah, dude, we're finally gonna see Scarlet Witch. You know what I mean? Like, this chick's supposed to be crazy, like super powerful. Like, you get a glimpse of that in Endgame. She starts ripping Thanos apart. Like
Yep.
she turns it on for a second, and you just get a glimpse of it. And I think it was like a Yas Queen type scene for a lot of the fans, but really, like what I saw was like a sliver of like her power. You know, like Thanos within seconds was willing to sacrifice his entire army to not die because of her. You know what I mean? So we got some big stuff with her in the future. I like WandaVision because of how creative it was, and that's refreshing to me. But as a character, I liked it because of what it did with Wanda. A lot of people don't, but that's where I'm coming from with that, because it's a very interesting future for that character for sure. What about
Yeah.
Black Widow? Did you see Black Widow?
I did. I mean, I don't have really any comments to say other than
Yeah.
fake Russian accents everywhere.
Yeah, it's the accents that are bad. You know, Scarlett Johansson. I don't think she started off with it. Maybe a slight bit. I know Elizabeth Olsen dropped it real quick. You know, I had a hard time watching that. Much like Eternals. Eternals to me was just boring and hard to watch. I didn't like it at all. I don't think 3%, 2% of people that saw that film knew anything about the Black Knight at the end of that film, and why Jon Snow was tempting to touch a sword imbued with some type of magic. Nor were they aware that it was most likely Blade that asked him, you know, if he really wanted to do that after that scene. So they're leading in with some weird stuff with this new phase, because they've run through their gauntlet of popular heroes, you know. So they're starting to dig a little deep. Did you like Eternals?
No, I mean, I don't. It was. I think I had to watch it twice because the first time I fell asleep in it. So I mean, there's just nothing to write home about for me with that movie.
I like the Celestials aspect of it, but the characters I don't care. But the Superman wannabe, I understand the discrepancies of Marvel having their own Clark Kent flying around, but a lot lamer in the Eternals than Superman for sure. So
Yeah.
I wasn't having it. But we did watch it.
For the interest of time, just in general, what do you think of all the Disney Plus content?
I'm probably pretty bad at asking for opinions on like the alternate media, because things like Agents of Shield and Agent Carter and a little bit of Daredevil I didn't watch Jessica Jones. Luke Cage I watched, it was whatever. Iron Fist I watched, it was horrible. So like going into it that way, I was like, I don't really feel the Marvel series, you know. But once I saw WandaVision and saw kind of the creative aspect of it and how they were expanding with production value and effort, and you get some talent up on the screen, you know, it was a different story. So when it came to being open to the Disney Plus things, I was a lot more willing. Falcon and the Winter Soldier was a little bit boring, but whatever. I truly hate the new Captain America outfit, but it's comic accurate. I hated it there too. Loki was super good. I like the introduction of Kang the Conqueror. You know, that's going to be a massive deal. People definitely need to be watching about that for sure.
So real quick on Loki, Owen Wilson's character, I think his name is Mobius.
Mobius, yeah.
Do you think he's a Loki variant?
I don't know. I never even considered that one, to be honest.
I had that thought a couple of days ago when I was preparing for this. And
why would you think that? What led you to think that?
He's so fascinated by Lokis. He's hunting Lokis, and there's a couple key phrases that he says. I mean, he says glorious purpose, and I know he's come across other Lokis, but like that's definitely like a Loki thing to say. Then there's one phrase that he says is like, Loki's hunt Loki's the best, or something along those lines, and he doesn't look like a classic Loki, but
none of them. There's a crocodile Loki.
Oh, I mean, that one's crazy.
Love it.
Oh, it's super fun. But I think it'd be really funny if he is a Loki variant, and maybe I know they're talking about doing a season 2 for that show of him being exposed as a Loki and seeing what power he has. I think would be really fun.
I don't know. I think they've established enough of that character now to where I think he could stand on his own 2 feet. Like I think you could build an entire film around Loki now and have it based around the TVA and you know, murmurs of Kang the Conqueror, and have it easily play into the phase 4, phase 5, you know.
Yeah.
It's just we also have to take into consideration on what they're planning with all this, because I mean, what if was a palate cleanser and also kind of a warm up, right? Because you did get Captain Britain in Multiverse of Madness. You know, Captain Britain made the appearance there. Now, Peggy Carter being Captain Britain is a newer development. That was a what if scenario. It might have popped up in the comics after the film started popping up, but prior to that, Captain Britain was just a British variant of Steve Rogers. You know, he was a British version of their super soldier. So they did a little bit of morphing. I think Peggy Carter, though, is a lot more badass of a character. And then, like, in Multiverse of Madness, you know, her with the jetpack and stuff and integrating
that was fun.
Was nice. And yeah, it was super fun. So, you know, they're starting to dabble with some of this weird stuff. And, you know, with that, I mean, you can maybe assume that you'll get some Ultron, you know, popping back into the mix.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you got some duds. There's some duds in there. Like Hawkeye, I kind of considered a dud. I love the fact that it was Christmas themed, though, like so much.
Oh, yeah. Well, with Hawkeye, I feel really bad for the character. I mean, at this point, he's one of the original Avengers. He's been in like 12 years of movies now and content. He's never been the star of a movie or a show. He's always been doing the side thing. And even in the show named after him, he's almost always playing second fiddle to the new chick.
Well, it was an introduction of her, to be honest, as she's taking over that.
Oh, totally. Yeah. However, you get where I'm coming from. It's just like, I feel bad. Like, I thought me going into that was like, oh, he's going to have his true own show. And no, it was the introduction of this chick. And
like, I want to feel bad too, but you start thinking about it deeper. You'd be like, you can't make a movie about this dude. Like, you wouldn't be able to make a fun movie about that dude, to be honest. You could make an hour-long, like, you know, series where you could have some zany adventures and have him work alongside another character to feed lines off of and be quippy and be that older Avengers that is kind of like, you know, I'm over it type. And that's what they did. I think they just knew their boundaries with that character and kind of understand that he's a little bit lame, especially since the character himself mentions multiple times that he is obscenely underpowered compared to the people that he rubs, you know, elbows with.
I do think that an opportunity was missed with him not being, or where Black Widow was in that movie. I think there was an opportunity missed that they didn't have it. Like, you know, they talk about what happened in Budapest. Mm-hmm. Like, having something that happened after that, where it's before Avengers, before she goes and joins Tony at Stark Industries or anything like that, where it's just them in the good old S.H.I.E.L.D. days. Yeah, I think that would have been a really fun like series or movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they could have.
But then they could have co-starred that, and that, I feel like that would have been more fun. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, again, they fumbled with Black Widow already with the release on that, and like they backburned that film for years. Like, it wasn't just something that well, let's wait 6 months and see what happens, you know.
It only released a year ago. It was July 9th of last year.
Did it release simultaneously on both platforms, or was it just movie theaters?
I think it was simultaneous, but I mean, you had to pay like $20 or $30 on Disney Plus to even watch it at that first bit.
Yeah.
So
something like that. I do remember there was a pay discrepancy with Scarlett Johansson and Disney. I mean, hey, she's in that spot where she's been around so long that she should basically get whatever she wants. You know, if you guys are gonna keep her, then hey, pay her.
Yep.
You know, then you know you got Miss Marvel, which I'm not going to talk on too much because I only watched one episode.
It's still coming out.
Yeah, I think they have episode 4 or 5 out, or 5 comes out this week or something like that. But I know the changes they made. They didn't admit to it, but you know, her original abilities were akin to Mr. Fantastic. She had stretchy abilities. I'm not sure if you played Marvel's Avengers, the game, but that was.
I played the demo for it.
If she was in the demo, I think was just the bridge scene, but
yes,
majority of the game is you playing as her, which is lame. And she is like 100% Reed Richards, stretchy, you know, Stretch Armstrong. In the show, she has more of a Green Lantern-esque type ability that allows her to basically do the same thing, but a little bit extra. Now, whether or not they changed that because they didn't want it to kind of confuse people or start leading people down a train of thought as to maybe their powers are connected, they did some changes with her in anticipation of Reed Richards entering entering the arena. So that hasn't been finalized, but that's what I got from it. But my opinion of the show is that it's kind of like,
I mean, do we really want to make any final comments before it's all the way done?
yeah, I mean, I should say that my initial comment on the first episode was that I think she is really good as an actress. I think that she knows more than pretty much any of the other actors and actresses in MCU combined about Marvel lore. And she is more of a diehard fan for the character that she plays than Tom Holland was for Spider-Man. So, I mean, in regards to her as a character and like her as an actress and participant in the MCU, she's like top tier. Like, you got to watch out because this chick knows like everything. You know what I mean? So, and she will defend that character because she knows more about that character than you did before you even knew that that character existed, you know? So, I like that trend of picking up people like that. That's the Dave Filoni aspect of putting them in the right spot, you know? So it's nice to see. However, you know, the show is a little bit of a like beat over your head type of mentality out the gate. And, the storyline was kind of like, all right, well, get to it. But, I need to go and continue watching it. And like you stated earlier, just don't want to make an assumption early because I know that once she starts getting into it, it's probably going to be super badass and she's going to play a huge role and the Young Avengers and where the MCU goes from here. So, you know, that's kind of my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, let's round this off by talking about Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness. What do you think?
Pretty good. Well, I guess quickly, what do you think of Moon Knight?
Oh, I really like Moon Knight.
Yeah, I like
Oscar Isaac is, I think, one of my favorite actors right now.
He's a Star Wars boy, you know, you got it.
Oh yeah. But I think he does a really good job having the multi-personalities and having like that third personality be like hinted at in a couple of those last episodes. Then that very last end credit scene of Jake coming out to play.
Fourth, the fourth personality. So
no, it's in the show, isn't it? The third.
No, you have was it Mr. Knight? Then you have Moon Knight, and then you have Steven, and then you have Jake Lockley. And then you got Mark Spector with his alternate personality being Moon Knight. But no, the way that it's presented in the comic books is kind of like a like Split, like you've seen like the movie Split, where each character is their own like headspace. They're their own characters. And like, yes, you do have Mr. Knight is reflective of Steven's personality in that sense, but each one is treated as like separate characters. But I get what you mean.
This is me, non-other media Marvel stuff guy. It's just what is presented through the movies and Disney Plus now. It definitely felt like three personalities with Steven and Mr. Knight and Mark and Moon Knight, or I can't remember what you called that particular one, with those guys sharing the different aspects of the suited up character versus the non-suit, where it's the same personality, it's the same headspace. At least that's how I feel it's presented.
Yeah.
Then you have that third where it's, you know, some stuff's going to happen later on when we see later iterations of Moon Knight in future content. I'm looking forward to it.
From what I understand, he has no alternate form of Moon Knight. Jake Lockley is just one of the other alternate personalities. So he doesn't have like an opposite in terms of like his super version, you know? So
interesting.
I think that's probably also where that's something they didn't portray. I mean, kind of, you get a little bit of it.
Oh,
because there's no hint that there's a bad Moon Knight, you know, that's just, there's some character that keeps popping in and murdering people. The accent they gave him at the end, I think he's speaking Spanish. I don't know, whatever. But I like the show. A big thing that taking place in that series was the fact that you're being introduced to the gods. You know, you're gonna have Love and Thunder, right?
Yeah.
We know
Thor, Love and Thunder. Yeah.
Thor, Love and Thunder, and you have Russell Crowe playing Zeus, and you have more introduction of god characters in there, including Gore the God Butcher. So Gore the God Butcher in that film, you know, is going to be played by Christian Bale. They didn't make him look exactly the way he is. However, he's imbued with a sword that has super, super crazy powers to it. And it imbues the person that wields the sword superhuman strength and abilities. And the sword has the ability to murder gods. The thing is that the sword itself requires the essence of gods to keep its host alive. So he has to kill gods to survive. So it's a very interesting story that's going to take place in that. I saw some of the acting from Christian Bale, and he's super hammy. I'm loving it. It's a Taika Waititi film, so he's going to just ride that. But that was what I got from Moon Knight, is that you get a lot of God talk. I love the Egyptian setting. But like you said, Oscar Isaac is like a straight G, and I just love him pretty much in everything right now. But you did mention Multiverse of Madness, and that is the last film we should cover to wrap it up. But what did you think?
I texted you after I watched it earlier this week for the first time saying this movie is whack. So I liked it. It was just so different. I knew it was going to be a horror or more horror-esque, and it delivered on that very well.
Yeah.
And that's not my normal wheelhouse as far as like when I sit down on a Friday night to watch a movie with my wife, we're not watching horror movies. So that was interesting when we sat down and watched that, but I liked it. It was fun. It was dark, crazy.
That's the thing.
Intriguing.
I didn't get a horror vibe from it. You got a horror vibe from it?
In a couple aspects. I mean, we have
there's a couple scenes.
Wanda just obliterating everything and like, turning people into spaghetti and the dude's brain like blowing up, and it's just like, oh my gosh, this is happening in the MCU right now.
You're like covering your wife's eyes and like eyes and ears. You're like, no, don't watch. Yeah, it was. The thing is like, I'm here for Sam Raimi. I knew what was coming, and I was like, oh, I'm here for it, dude. Get wild. And Sam Raimi knows how to get wild. He everything that people have an issue with that film, to me, is like exactly what I expected to be in that film. It's like you get scenes of Wanda's face being all weird and very Evil Dead 2-ish. I know I discussed this with you earlier and asked if you had seen any of the Evil Dead films, and you said no. To anybody that doesn't know, Evil Dead is a series of films that were in the 80s, directed by a very young and ambitious Sam Raimi, along with Ted Raimi, who plays a number of characters. I think he also plays the cop in The Quarry, a new game that came out. He plays the cop, the creepy one, I believe. He also played like the assistant to J. Jonah Jameson in the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. So the obnoxious guy that with the glasses that kept coming in and saying stupid stuff, that was Sam Raimi's brother. And Ted Raimi is responsible for a lot of like the ghouls and monsters and stuff. He was the one in the prosthetics and getting tugged around by his crotch on wires and strings and flung around and doused in,
that's a big no,
disgusting things. Like he had, it was a brace. It's not like they just tied it onto it, but he has a brace and very uncomfortable, but they were in it, and Sam Raimi's thing is shot development. He loves to invent shots. And I remember watching documentaries decades ago by this point, but his process, he had rigs set up to where, and you see them, I'm not sure exactly where they think it's actually in the movie. There's a scene where he's having like his head smashed into, or somebody's head's being smashed into, like medicine cabinets, and you kind of get the camera moving from one cabinet to the other, kind of looking through it, and the face is getting smashed into the camera, and then it moves, and then another smash, and then it moves. Those shots, the way that he gets inventive with the camera angles is what makes Sam Raimi film Sam Raimi. If I'm not mistaken, he invented the technology that the swing cam from Spider-Man, the original trilogy, the swing cam that they used to swing down the streets of like Brooklyn and New York and stuff. That is now adapted and used in like the NFL and NBA and stuff like that. So it's like the advancements that he makes in just the way you shoot film is monumental. So as a fan of Sam Raimi, I was just like here for it. He had a lot of interesting shots, a lot of color. Get a little wild with it, like you said, get a little dark and horror-esque. I liked it a lot, but there are some shortcomings of it and a little bit of goofiness, and I know a lot of people have some issues with Wanda becoming a villain. What do you think about that?
I think she's a great villain. However, I think her motivation is just a little off. She's just so hyper focused on getting her kids back, and WandaVision is getting Vision back, and it's just like so many other people could let the past just be the past, and
Yeah.
she's just so hyper focused on it. So she's always been a little on the crazy side in the MCU. It follows. It's just that didn't hit a chord with me, but.
Well, I saw something on the internet too. That was like, it was like a meme. It was just joking about it, and it's like the conversation between Doctor Strange and Wanda, where he's like, okay, so instead of killing America Chavez, how about I just find a universe where that Wanda died and the kids don't have a mother, and you can just go there and live with them. And it's like, oh, fantastic. What a great solution. Thank you. And that was the end of the movie. So it's like, there's some ways around it. She definitely like went off the deep end, and she's utilizing the manipulation of her environments and stuff with the it's the reality stone, I think it is, that's in her head. I'm not 100% sure. I forget. It's been a decade.
Well,
Yeah.
She's also using the magic of the Darkhold, which is
true, but like I forget
in itself.
What film is it? Is it one of the films has a flashback? Oh, it's WandaVision. A flashback where she's in that cell that she's in at the end of Age of Ultron, I think it is.
Yeah.
And they're experimenting with the stone, I believe. They're experimenting with something, and she's given that power, which to me, I mean, it's an easy write-in for a mutation, right? Like, just say that it mutated her genes and that she's now the first mutant, and it caused a ripple effect or something, like they might still go with it, but like I had mentioned before, in our just basic discussions, is that Wanda, or Scarlet Witch, is known for doing some pretty mischievous things, some pretty evil things in the Marvel universe. The at one point, what was it? I think it was the House of M. And don't quote me on this because I didn't read it. I actually really, really want to read it. It's a series. I believe the House of M is where she was able to distort reality for the entire world. I'm pretty sure, I might be wrong, but she was able to distort reality for every individual person on the planet to give them everything they wanted. And then the story was like based around like something like that. Might not be 100% accurate, but I believe the story is something akin to that. And at the very least, it's one of the more predominant storylines in Marvel history, just in terms of popularity and just being badass, much like the Phoenix Saga, which has been squandered multiple times. It's one of those. So we might get House of M at some point, which would be super sick. But you would need Magneto, you would need the X-Men, you would need probably the old Avengers, but they'll deal with like young Avengers and stuff like that. But there's wiggle room with her character because so much crazy stuff has happened with her characters in the comic books that they could really make some interesting stuff. But as far as the Multiverse of Madness and all the intricacies and stuff like that, I did think some of them were corny. I think the third eye was corny, although that is in the comic books. That is comic accurate. That is not something that he just threw in there. However, I believe it is tied to him utilizing chaos energy. The term.
Well, it's the Darkhold.
The Darkhold. He's tapped into it, and that's what gives him that third eye. I believe that's like the backstory of that. It's not necessarily like a good or bad thing. It's just an expansion on his mind because he dipped a little bit too deep, And I think personally, one of the more overlooked things in that film, people like to talk about the spaghettification of Mr. Fantastic, and Black Bolt's head being imploded because he uttered help or something like that. It's like the only word he ever said, that wasn't intended to inflict damage, and it ended up killing him, which is insane. It was definitely it was like, oh, it's like, oh, yeah. oh my God. Oh, Jesus, super graphic, but so in Sam Raimi's wheelhouse, it's like, I'm surprised we didn't get any of that in Spider-Man, like that's got Sam Raimi written all over it. And turning, chopping Peggy Carter in half was this like epic scene, just the way that it was shot. Like, just think of that shot in your head, dude. Commented on, well, I didn't comment, we talked about it earlier, but one of the things I hated about Thor was the Dutch angles. Every camera shot in that movie was tilted, and it's annoying, to go from a cheap Dutch angle attempt at mustering up emotion to having just a sick camera angle of an up close shot of the bloody shield into the wall, and then in the background, out of focus, you see Peggy's body split and just fall to the ground in pieces. Like, oh, dude, like it's just those are the shots that make Sam Raimi shit like so good. But I think the one thing that's overlooked in that scene is that somewhere out there, it might not be our 616 universe or our 11999 universe or whatever it is in the movies. It might not have been our Reed Richards, but somewhere out there, Franklin Richards' dad was murdered by Wanda. And the Wanda that was responsible for it is the Wanda that is in our movie universe. And that should have some type of repercussions at some point. Because those who don't know, Reed Richards is literally the most powerful mutant ever in existence, period. There is no other mutant that's more powerful.
You mean Franklin?
Or I'm sorry, Franklin Richards. There is no more mutant powerful than him. There are certain mutants that have reached beyond Omega level and stuff like that. But as a character, in his true form, he is the most powerful mutant. And at one point, and we didn't touch on it in this discussion, but the introduction of the Celestials is also kind of a hint that we might be getting Galactus in the future. Galactus is not a celestial. Galactus is a human that was left over from the Big Bang. He was a character that was attempting to stop the collapse of the universe, which led to the next Big Bang and the recreation of the new universe, the one that we live in. He managed to survive the Big Bang, and then when being birthed into the new universe, became Galactus, the destroyer of worlds. So he had to consume he had to consume planets to sustain his own life. And then he has Silver Surfer, who is his herald, who he sends out to find planets that he will be able to feed off of, which you get in Rise of the Silver Surfer, Fantastic Four 2, back in the day with Chris Evans and Jessica Alba and all that good stuff. I like those movies. But at one point in the comic books, Franklin Richards is able to make Galactus his herald. So we're talking about insane powers. And if they go through with that storyline, somewhere out there, like right now, as we have this discussion in this MCU timeline, there is a pissed off Franklin Richards who just had his dad murdered by Wanda from the MCU. And to me, when I saw that, it was like chills. I was like, oh, he even mentioned he had kids. Like, you guys are screwed, So no telling on where it's going to go, but I actually enjoyed that movie quite a bit. Anything you want to say about Doctor Strange? Anything that you actually liked about the film?
I mean, I liked it. It was just so different compared to everything that we've gotten to date that it was kind of jarring for me at first until I got into the groove of the movie.
What'd you think about Patrick Stewart and his little cameo?
Oh, I love Patrick Stewart. I love him in Star Trek, and specifically Next Gen is
he's such a thespian.
My favorite Star Trek.
He's just such a classic thespian. He's just such a he's like such an actor, he's in such corny roles, but he's such a respectable actor.
Yes, but seeing him again in a movie as Professor X, it was nice to see. I really liked that. Nice. I was very sad that he was killed off so quickly.
Yeah, definitely a horror shot on that one too. I thought they handled it fun, but and to wrap this up, because this is the last film, but I'd say that the one thing that I do appreciate from that is literally every film that has ever come out since like the third film in all of MCU, I said, I swear one day I will hear that 90s X-Men tune in the MCU dramatic manner. Like one day I will. And when that happens, I'm going to shit myself. And like, it wasn't.
Did you?
I didn't shit myself because it wasn't the full song, but they had the diddly and I puckered a little bit. I was ready, but I didn't get it fully. However, we're knocking on the door. And that's a good world to live in when we're knocking on the door of getting X-Men and Fantastic Four in the MCU. And that's what I got from Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And that's why I appreciate it personally.
Awesome.
So we'll go ahead and end it there. I want to say thank you to Garrett for stopping by. I appreciate it, my friend.
It's my pleasure as always.
And we'll go ahead and just wrap it up with a little bit of social plug here. You got Nerd Chatter Show at Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can also check us out on YouTube as well as nerdchatter.com, where you'll see some of the most recent episodes of the Nerd Chatter podcast. We also have Extra Nerd Chatter, which is a side segment that we have of smaller discussions that we do during the week of things like, episodes of TV shows, video game announcements, and things like that. that stuff you can catch on the YouTube channel as well. People who are interested in joining our Patreon, you'll have access to some advanced showings of the Nerd Chatter podcast, as well as some of those extra Nerd Chatter and even some segments that we produce specifically for the Patreon supporters over there. So definitely check that out if you're interested in supporting the podcast. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today with this MCU catch up. We tried to gun through it as fast as possible. I apologize if it ran a little bit too long still, but I think we did better than our first version, which we may still edit and throw up for our Patreon supporters as an outtake, a 2-hour outtake. But yeah, we are out of here. We'll be back next week, most likely with the DC discussion and possibly another extra Nerd Chatter, but most likely just next week's podcast. So we're going to go ahead and end it here. Again, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Have a good one.